Team, I think we're there. I was just saying thanks, Dan Blundell, for muting everybody. I think we can start. George, if you can come off mute and give us an introduction.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Sprint 3 show and tell. It's quite hard to believe it's only 2 weeks since the last show and tell. The balls which were shown up quite well by Richard and Robert in the previous two show and tell seems to have been getting into a more meaningful order with fewer remaining in the air. The Trello board, wow, what a revelation. Unfortunately, we have a master in Kona Lee who can move around it with such skill, leaves us all in awe. This sprint we have covered, I'll go on to that in a minute, and you'll hear a bit more about these things as we go through the show and tell. We've covered the future content workflow, the operating model, started a discussion on the future Northants operating model, refined user stories, and using the testing prototype. Okay, over to Richard.
Thanks, George. Welcome, everybody. I think this is our third show and tell now, and we've been going about 7 weeks. So just as a reminder to anybody new, these show and tells, the whole point of it really is to show progress early and often. So that agile approach of rather than just everyone being hidden away, build something, and then 6 months later, you see what's built and you either like it or not. This way of doing things, every couple of weeks, people can see exactly what the team have been up to. So it's great to get people's feedback, either use the chat to post things as you see it through the session, or at the end, there'll be a slide where there's contact details to email into the team, or come on the mic at the end, put your hand up and ask any questions. So the more engagement we get, the better these sessions are really. So just on the next slide, in terms of covering today, we've got some new people who've joined the team. So we'll introduce some of those. We'll go through what has been achieved in Sprint 3. So design is a big focus of today. I think people voted for that last week. So lots of the content that has been created today shows that. We'll also talk about what's in scope for the private beta for January 15th, the services that have been shortlisted and signed off for the MVP for vesting day. There's also some slides and mock-ups of how the existing sovereign sites might look post-vesting day with the new brands on there, and also some updates on user testing. So I think you'll see through this hour the quality of the content that has been created for this slide deck is really impressive, and it will give you an idea of the breadth of the project and what's been covered so far. They'll also cover some of the things that are going to be planned for Sprint 4, and at the end there'll be that gives you an insight again into the kind of questions and testing sessions that have been done by the team with real customers to give us that insight into how these new sites should be created. So I think you've probably seen the next slide that's got the existing team on. This is the blended team for Future Gov and Northamptonshire. And on the next slide, you've got some new members. So that's one of the challenges of the project. We've got people leaving, not just the project, but the councils. New people joining, so blending both teams together to keep up the pace is a challenge. But Lawrence has joined us. Great thing about this slide is all these people are internal, so it's given opportunities to everybody at the councils to get involved. Lawrence and Burrows joined us as a UX designer, mock-ups, the sovereign sites and the branding later on. Kevin, you probably all know, more of a technical lead. Gavin from East Northants, he's taken a lead on the comms side of things. David Bevan from the county is going to be the lead content for the West, and Stephen Miller from content for the North. So really great to have people on board, and the more we go, the more we build the momentum up, the more we're going to be able to get more people on board from across all the councils. So over to Connolly now, and she's going to talk about some of the achievements from Sprint 3.
Thanks, Richard. So for those that are just joining us for the first time, this is something that we prepared in Sprint 2. So this is the indicative goals that we think we need to achieve for vesting day. So one of the, I guess, core challenges is that this website project is run in an agile fashion. So we work in 2-week time box sprints. We've just finished Sprint 3, so we're about to see all of the wonderful things that we did in the last 10 days. And we're moving into Sprint 4. And like most projects, if they're running in agile fashion, you'll notice that Sprint 5 and 6 over the Christmas New Year period, they might be extended or shortened to suit everyone's holiday leave. So that's one of the challenges we're going to manage over the next week or so. So what have we been up to? We've been up to a lot. And rather than go through, I guess, a quick snapshot update, I'm going to hand over to the team, which will take you through in a much better manner than I would, all of the details. So on the side there's a couple our design system from Chris. Hannah will take you through a bit of the prioritization of features that we did for the beta test in terms of the website components and templates. And Stuart on the bottom will tell you what that grey bar is in terms of how we're going to be planning to communicate out the different services and what content we need to make sure we're ready for vesting day. So if you were here for Sprint 2, we ended the show and tell with what would you like us to talk more about? And the clear winner with 26 votes was website design. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to our lead designer, Chris.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, so you're going to have to listen to me talking for a little while now, but you voted for it. So let's get started. So we thought it might be best to actually start by talking about design itself, and before we get into the details of what we've been doing this sprint. So what is design? Design obviously covers like a wide variety of different fields, different work, but at its core, design tends to be about solving problems for people. Design is not just about making things look pretty. Of course, we do want things to look good, but visual interaction design, typography, colors, user interface design, all of these are just individual parts of a well-designed product. I think, yeah, if you want to move on to the next slide, I think what's always forgotten about that is the word people. And so I think that is one of the core things when it comes to design. And so what we try to do is work in a human-centered design focus. And yeah, obviously, because without the people using the product, the design process what we'd risk is designing for either stakeholders or for the team that are closest to the development, or even just for ourselves as designers. So you always really want to involve people as at the core of this design. So this is an example. This is one example of many different ways of the human-centered design process. You'll see this in lots of different forms and lots of different diagrams. But I think I won't go into detail about every single thing in here. But I think what I would say is while this looks very linear, it's really not a linear process. This is kind of a fraction of like what is done. And if you imagine this almost zoomed out, you'd see this is one small linear piece of the development and design process. But actually, this is happening loads and loads of times in different kind of scales, whether it's in small scales or wide scales. So I'm just looking at some messages coming in. I don't know if there's a question, but yeah. So the human-centered design process often feels a bit more like this. If you want to move on to the next slide. So part of this involves a change of mindset. So moving from a different mindset to a design focused mindset. I won't read out every single one of these, but I think what this helps to show is why you might hear us kind of focusing on the most minimal thing, the most simple thing possible. Why you'll often hear us asking lots and lots of questions that might seem inane or annoying or whatever, but it's because we're trying to simplify everything and trying to get rid of ambiguity as much as possible. So we try to work to a set of design and technology principles. Some of these I think you'll know easily, like accessibility, privacy by design, things like that are a core part of design. But I think one to really touch on here, which I'll talk about more in a bit about with the design system, is the small pieces loosely joined. The idea that we're not trying to build a kind of monolith single thing that can apply to everything. We're trying to just build very small, separated and well connected pieces of design to create this whole ecosystem together. A good example of that, if you use, I don't know, things like Google platform, you'll have your Gmail, your Google Calendar, your all the different services that all link together. They can communicate with each other, but they are individual things existing on their own. So yeah, I will talk you through the updates that we've made in the last 2 weeks. So you would have seen this if you were in the last session. We took you through the designs we made for a couple of flows, but the main one being a user trying to find their bin collection day and the theming between the north and the west. And so what we've been working on is kind of iterating these, but also starting to build these into code. So as part of building it in code, we need to start thinking about interaction states. So this is thinking about how the design responds to a user's interaction. The most important part of this is letting users know what things are interactive and what things are not. So I'm sure you've seen things like this before, but things like hover states are really important for desktop environments to help inspire to users that something is clickable and something is interactive. But more importantly than ever is focus states, and they're used to help a user who might be navigating the website via a keyboard or via a screen reader, and they help tell you where you are on the page currently. And yeah, so we need to start thinking about this as we start building it. The next thing we've been working on is iconography. So based on some initial user testing feedback and that we did in the previous sprint, we wanted to start testing icons. So we plan to start testing these next. We want to kind of A/B test them. A/B testing is essentially just testing an example with and an example without icons and getting feedback on this. And so if you want to move on to the next slide, I think I've just zoomed in a bit so you can see. So just to touch on icons, icons are complicated. They're open to interpretation by default. They even carry cultural baggage. Like what this means is that one person might assume an icon means one thing that another person would assume means a completely different thing. So an important thing to note is that icons would never exist on their own. Like icons should always be accompanying text of what it represents, because they are inherent. They're not there to replace anything. They're not the way people navigate, and which you see sometimes. But in terms of accessibility, if we are to use icons, they are only there to help users. So the way they can help users is to help them skim read, to help them find things and navigate easier, but and be able to kind of cut through the content. But yeah, so what we are proposing at the moment is we've started creating a kind of icon set, because we want them to be themed, to all look like they come from the same family. But these need testing and iterating, and we plan to test with test with icons and without. But at the core, what we plan to do is to only use them for the top level services. Because as you get into lower levels, it becomes harder and harder to represent what a service means. So take, for example, the bin collection service that we've shown before. As you get down to the next level, there is services such as finding your bin collection day or applying for a new bin, and things like this would be very hard to represent in iconography, but also they wouldn't be adding the same value as they would at this level. And yeah, the lines become a bit more blurred. But yeah, the main thing I want to say is that icons are hard to get right and they take time. And it's something we plan to test thoroughly in the coming weeks. So the next thing we've also been focusing on is creating some mobile mock-ups of the previous designs. So you can see here another variation of icons. But I think the key thing to talk about when it comes to mobile and responsive design is we will always be building mobile first. So again, it's something we need to test. But what I want to say is that the aim of responsive design, I'd say, is to provide as much contextual information to the user needed at the time on the device they're using. So you never want to take anything away from a user who is using desktop or mobile necessarily, but if you can help a user on one platform and that same help can't or shouldn't apply on the other platform, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing that. So a good example on the previous screen, sorry, is between those kind of the quick links. So the reason they are taken out on the mobile design is because the goal of the user on this screen is to get to the service they are looking for. On desktop, we have the real estate to show more than one in a line. We have the real estate to be able to show more information. So we can provide these kind of quick links to the most popular services. But on mobile, those same quick links, which are useful, have the potential of getting in the way of users because they force you to scroll further and they force you to read more in order to get to the service you're looking for. So the idea is that we don't necessarily responsive design isn't necessarily about squashing a full desktop website into a mobile frame, and it's also not about stretching a mobile design into the size of a desktop website. What we want to be doing is providing contextual designs at each size. So another example you can see on this screen is the breadcrumbs. So the idea behind breadcrumbs is that we show, actually on the next screen it might be better, that we show where this page comes from. However, on mobile, the breadcrumbs sit in one of the prime real estate areas. So one of the things we do is rather than showing all of the links, which could be 3, 4, 5 links, depending on how deep the page is, we just provide a backlink. Whereas on desktop, we can provide that context and provide more links as another example. Or say, for example, the sidebar in this page becomes an accordion because it's not the core goal of this page. It's not the core user goal. It's an added benefit for the users. These are just some examples. So to try and speed up so I'm not talking constantly at you, the design system is what we've been also working on in this sprint. So I just wanted to quickly go over the design system again. The idea behind this is that we have a central repository of where all the design lives in code, and what you have is the North and the West will have their own content management system, both built on the same Drupal headless content management system, but they'll be able to manage their content. Content editors will feed into this. There'll be a front end app that harvests the data from the content management system and pulls from the design system the exact components it needs to display that content on the page. And then this is what is given to the user when they load a particular page of the website. So at any time, we're not loading everything that is needed. So here's just a really quick example of one of those, one of these screens broken down into components. So within the design system, we'll have components for the header, the breadcrumbs, the heading itself, the title, and say, for example, the section links. There's 3 on this page, and each one of those is broken up into smaller components with a title and then a single link. And then there'll be an actual container that wraps around the whole page and a footer as just an example of how these kind of building blocks and slices and components that we talk about actually all come together to create a single page. Next slide, please. Yes, so I was just going to give a really quick demo of Storybook, the design system, which you might hear us talk about. I will share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see this. I can't see anything anymore. Yeah. Cool. So this is Storybook. It's essentially just a really simple way of displaying all of those components as isolated single entities on their own. And it comes with a load of useful things. I've talked about this before, but it comes with things like the ability to write documentation around each of the components, and it can automatically test for accessibility and lots of useful things like that. So I'll just really quickly show you what we've been working on. As I talked about, we have things like breadcrumbs, which are now, as I've said, now in code. So you can use your keyboard to kind of navigate. You can interact with it and thing like that. You have the footer and the header and the containers that I'm talking about. And then one of the other things that's really great about this is that we have theming built in. So what you'll see is that just set to default, I've been adding in a kind of a core kind of GDS theme, which is just there as almost like a wireframe. But what we have the ability to do is switch into either north or west at any time. So this is what the front end of the app of the website will be doing. It will be pulling this single component, this header, and wrapping it in a theme. So you can see, for example, how the header might look on different pages. And as I said, we've got multiple different components, and you can see the typography changes and the color scheme and anything else we want to change. So just an example, we have some page examples. So for example, this, let's find this up. We have this bin collection page that we've shown as a screen on its own, which is now a navigatable page built in code. So what we can do here is, as I said, we've got automated accessibility testing. So you can see it runs through a set of kind of predetermined criteria to test the accessibility on the page. You can automatically test this on different screen sizes to try out how the design responds to being on mobile, and a variety of other things, such as testing for different visual issues. So trying to see how the colors respond to many different types of visual issues. But yeah, I think that's a quick roundabout display of the design system. I'm just handing over control. Oh, I need to drop out of that. Connolly, if you can put up your slide deck.
Yep,
you.
and Chris, there's a few things saying on the comments saying very exciting, and this looks very simple and smart. So I think there's a few comments in there.
Awesome. Sorry, I couldn't see them while I was presenting.
Yeah, there are some questions as well at the beginning. If you want to answer to those in the chat, Chris, at the beginning,
Yeah.
really.
Maybe if we carry on and then I'll answer them at the end. I'll have a read through. So I'll hand you over to Hannah now to talk about the templates and components.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I'm a front-end developer at FutureGov. I've been working with Chris on the design system, and this sprint we've been looking at the user stories. So we've created user stories in our previous sprint, and all they are is just short, simple descriptions of a feature, and they're told from the perspective of the person who desires the capability. They're designed to get people discussing features and thinking more granularly, and they can be detailed or very high level, which makes them quite powerful. If you can go to the next slide, please. So what we did was we went through our list of user stories and we started blocking them out. So very, sketching them out, seeing what the commonalities were between each of them. And the more we went through, the more we realized a lot of them have a lot in common. And from this, we were able to make a set of reusable templates to focus on. You can go to the next slide, please. And then from there, because we don't obviously want every page to look the same, even though they might use the same template, this goes into what Chris was talking about with the building blocks and the slices. So for each user story, we have our template, list of templates for each of them, and we take each of those and we say, we need headers and breadcrumbs and footers, but different pages will need different information to make them more dynamic and more interesting to the users. So from there, we came up with a list of building blocks and from slices. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So we have a great big list of building blocks, templates and slices, but not a lot of time to build it all in. So we use the must-go prioritization framework to just prioritize which ones we must have, which ones we should have, and which ones we could have. And this was our list of must-haves for the private beta, which is in January the 15th. And then this is our list of should-haves and could-haves. And I'll hand you over to Lawrence for the neutral branding.
Hello, I'm Lawrence Burrow, digital service designer, and my main focus is user experience and user interface design. I have the privilege of working with the old sites, all the existing sovereign sites, and we have been looking at how we can ensure a smooth user journey between these sites and the new unitary sites with a minimum disruption, and try to kind of create a consistent experience across the sites. So in order to do that, we've considered a few options that are least disruptive and the ones that are more reasonably easy to do. So on the district and borough sites, we're introducing the new unitary logo above the current headers, and then we switch off the existing logo. And further changes could be, so each of these websites is unique in its own brand, but some of them are luckily aligned to one of the colors of their unitary. So the ones that really stand out, we could go further and switch the theme color to align with the unitary. On the NCC side, we've introduced both two logos of the two unitaries and for customers coming from either side. And the NCC logo is hidden, and clear links to either of the unitary websites. And a further modification could mean switching off the main dominant color and deciding on a call to action button color that will work between the three sites, so the West, North, and NCC. So I'll show you a few examples to represent the North, NCC, and the South. So this is how it looks at the moment. This is the East Northamptonshire. So the green is part of the new color for North. So we'll consider pushing the switching off the logo. If you go to the next slide, this is how it might look. So we introduce the new logo there, and the name remains. I've seen a few examples of others like Buckinghamshire. So since it's not a council, we leave the name of the area, the district, and we have the top links as they are, and then we don't interfere with the structure of the page so that we don't bring any confusion. So that's the the north example. If we look at the south for Daventry district, so we have as is now, and then if we look at how it's going to be next, it's going to have the theme color for west, the logo for west, and the name of the district, so that people stay within that area knowing, you know, like if they move to the West Unitary Council, they still keep that kind of theme color. And then we can look at Northamptonshire County Council. That's a more complex one. On the NCC site, this is how it looks at the moment. We have that dominant theme color purple. If we look at how it's going to be, we just working on the header, starting with the header. So let's see how the future looks, how it can be modified. To the next slide, Connolly. So in this case, so we've put both logos as one image, and then we have the name of the council at the just below that. Keep the head, the main navigation items there, and have links to go to either of the unitaries. And that's about it. That's kind of a representative examples of what is possible to do. So I'm working with the different people on this to see the extent to which we can achieve this. It's, as Chris said, it's all about design is about solving a problem. So the idea is very objective to see what causes the minimum confusion and making sure that people are transitioning smoothly to through the web experience from the current sites to the new site. And yeah, that's about. This is work in progress. So please, yeah, I'm welcome to make any comments about your initial reactions. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. So I'm going to talk quickly about user testing. So for those that weren't with us last week, we have started prototype testing, and it's important just to note that what we aim to do as a user researchers rather than academic researchers is we want just enough research. So we are always trying to keep our research action oriented. So we want to basically instill and build confidence about the next decision we need to make. So we find that it's always better to do research with more rather than less people, but unlike academic research, we don't obsess about the statistical significance. So instead we ask ourselves, do we have enough insight to decide on what to do next? So big shout out to Sue and Fiona and Ale and everyone else on the outside helping us recruit the resident research, as well as getting ready for the beta test. In terms of how we're recruiting, so Fiona's taking the lead on that, and she's working with customer service leads internally through bulletins. I think Kiri helped us put something in the Informer. If you haven't seen it yet, maybe someone can kindly put it in the chat. And then externally, utilizing community, volunteer, and business contacts and other online channels. And in terms of how we're targeting, so what we did as a research team was basically say for both West Northamptonshire and North Northamptonshire, we want to be able to test a sample of the population. So you can see on the right, there's a bit of on the right, there's a snippet where the yellow kind of pie charts represents the sample of the population from ethnic background, gender, age, digital literacy, disability, and also the population spread. And on the right-hand side, which is the blue pie charts, that's showing a snippet of how our current testing is going in percentages against the accurate sample. So I am going to hand over to one of our participants to just show you what user testing is like. So we have a discussion guide and we talk to the participant and we go through for about 50 to 55 minutes going through the tasks that we've set out and see what their feedback is on the overall look and feel of the prototypes, and if they've got anything else to say. At the very end, we ask them if it's now their time. We've got 5 minutes left to spare, and is there anything else they want to let us know? And this is just something that one of our participants that we tested last week shared, and I thought I'd share it with you all. So Chris, could you come off mute, just confirm if you can hear the volume? I'm just going to press play. Hopefully it all works, team.
It's very quiet. No, it's not. You can't hear it, sorry.
This stage, still very new and exciting. So, no, just thank you for letting me be. I know it's just a bit testing.
If you turn everyone, if you take your volume up the maximum, then I can hear something. Maybe.
So if you didn't hear that, we will share the slide deck. So basically, what the participants said was they were really kind of like happy and thankful. It's a big change and it's quite exciting. So the sentiment was just really positive after testing. What we're planning to do in a quite short period of time is to take 8 local council websites and then determine what content should be on the new sites for vesting day and what content should link out. It's definitely not a small thing to try and achieve. So it was really nice to see that the participant was excited to see what was next. So if you didn't hear that, we will send the slide deck around. So hopefully you'll be able to listen to it then. I'm going to hand over to Fiona now just to give us a recap of some insights we learned and what we plan to do next. Oh,
thanks, Connolly.
Sorry, Fee. There we go.
Thanks, Connolly. Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm Project Support Officer within the Functional House programme, and I'm supporting on the user research workstream. It's actually been really interesting conducting some of these user research interviews and discovering more about people's thinking and their personal and professional journeys through the website prototype. Today, we have discovered that some users mentioned that they prefer to see their sister services listed on the homepage in alphabetical order, as they felt it was more logical to them, but also explained that they weren't sure why it was listed before, if it was due to popularity, as Chris showed us before. And a few users have suggested that they believe that the council makes it difficult for people to contact them about making a complaint. So what's next for us? We are finalising resident recruitment in December before Christmas, and we're hoping to take part in some user testing with a mobile prototype, as Chris stated earlier. Hopefully continuing to test the iconography on the mock-up homepage. And lastly, we're finalising the beta test and communications plan for early next year to suit the beta website build. So much more things still to come. As Connolly mentioned, we're really trying to get a true representation across. We're being super inclusive across North and West. So if you do know anybody that would be interested in taking part, then please share with them the customer and digital email, which I'll include in the chat, and we'll be in touch. So now over to Ale.
Me actually. Hi. So the last time we did one of these, I think I put a question forward that we were going to try and answer in the sprint, and we have answered. So it was the choice between 2 different flavors of Drupal. Just to quickly recap the options there between standard Drupal, standard decoupled Drupal, which I cheekily termed the decent way, and then separately a project that's ongoing across a number of councils called Local Gov Drupal. We came to the decision in the end to use the decent flavour of Drupal for a couple of reasons. Mostly the Local Gov Drupal project being still in its infancy, and our desire to iterate on this project at a pretty rapid speed meant that it was important that we didn't have to kind of integrate just this early on. So what we've decided is that we will not use the Local Gov Drupal project directly, although we do really appreciate the work that they're doing. We think it's great, and one of the big benefits of the way that they're approaching their work is that they're very modular. So it is actually hopefully going to be possible for us to at least pick out a couple of the modules and use some of their code in our project. So we'll have a foundation set out by us with the option to sort of pull in bits of what they've done. And after vesting day, we're going to revisit this decision effectively, and we'll be able to see about getting in touch with that community again, maybe showing them what we've achieved. Obviously, this is all an open source project, so we can share our work, and because we're aligning ourselves architecturally with their approach, it's even potentially possible for us to kind of merge back in the future. But for now, we're doing things our way just for the time being. Lee.
Okay, yes. So we've been making some excellent progress with regards to the development. We've almost completed the solutions architecture definition. We've got the initial work and implementation of both the front end, back end with the design system. We've started the first content type of the service page, and we've added our first call to action slice to the editor. The 2 screenshots, obviously, one's below is the editor experience and above is the output from the front end. Over to you, Stuart.
Thanks, Lee. Great to see so much progress and things taking shape. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been working with quite a few people, Stephen, Ale, Richard and Juliet, to mention a few, to look at, I guess, the priorities and how we're communicating progress on this project. Connolly referred to at the start of the session that we're kind of running this project in an agile way. So the team largely focus on the 2 weeks ahead of them. Now, obviously, in a complex program of work like this, where we do have a fixed deadline of vesting day and there's lots of other change going on, we can't just focus on the 2 weeks ahead, because obviously we need to communicate what we're doing and what people can expect from us and when they can feed into that process. So it is quite complex to balance those two things. So we've done quite a bit of work over the last 2 weeks to revisit the priorities and what was going to be, I guess, in scope to be delivered for our target of kind of mid-January, to have stood up the 2 websites in a position where we can test them with users more publicly, and then what we'll prioritize between that point and vesting day, and what that might look like beyond. So this slide has got some key messages that we've been kind of trying to summarize so that we can communicate not only just in these sessions, but start to send out comms to a wide variety of stakeholders so they understand what we're aiming to do and when. So what we try to do is come up with some terms that we can kind of reuse and try and be consistent in our language as well, because we're conscious that when we start to talk about all of these things, people can quite quickly talk at cross purposes. So some of the work that's going on at the moment we're describing as the basic building blocks and trying to describe what that's going to mean for having 2 websites, and what those building blocks include. So some of the stuff that Hannah and Chris have been talking about in the design system, and how we'll have that kind of main navigation and landing pages. I guess reinforcing that for day 1 that we won't have migrated all of the content, and those existing sites will still be there and have content onto the stuff that Lawrence has been working on, talking about how we rebrand those to make that feel like a seamless experience is really important, and starting to talk about how we'll manage the content changes that will need to be made to those existing sites. And then we're starting to talk about what we're prioritizing first, and there's another slide in a minute that will cover that in a bit more detail. And then how we'll get into kind of a constant, beyond vesting day, start to get into a constant cycle of iterating, moving content over, improving it, looking at end-to-end services, and then decommissioning content from the old website, so eventually they will disappear. On the next slide, we've tried to accompany that with as simple as we can at this stage. It'll become much easier come January when we've got the basic sites built that we can show people more publicly. But it's a really quick breakdown of what that example experience will be on vesting day for most service information. So going from one of the 2 new homepages into a kind of a service area page that will list out a bunch of relevant services like bin collection, as Chris has showed us in some of the prototypes, and where it's services are being aggregated, you'll then be presented with a list of options to the relevant sovereign sites, or potentially the county site, and then you'll effectively end up on the old site. But obviously, in more recent iterations, we'd be able to include some of Lawrence's mock-ups that show how we're rebranding those existing sites as well. And we've also given the link to Buckinghamshire website, just because it is a really similar approach. Obviously, they've got a slightly different situation and they won't be disaggregating the county sites, but roughly it gives people an idea of what that experience might look and feel like across the website. And on the next slide, Con. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but I think yours might have frozen.
Okay, can you go back one, Con? Sorry.
Sorry, this delivery timeline?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect.
I don't think my screen refreshed. And so here's a really basic timeline. Now, obviously, we're doing a lot more than what is on this timeline, but this is just a way of us describing areas of content and the services we're working on and what's being prioritized. Some of these are still service areas, and we'll need to spend some time on those services breaking that down. So effectively, working on those basic building blocks between now and middle of January, and alongside that, thinking about some of the basic corporate information we know we need to be safe and legal, such as privacy policies, the contact us and confluence and complaint services. Then we'll be looking at some specific kind of service areas and follow-up services like legal and democratic, getting the news pages working. Council tax is one that we need to visit. a few others. And then alongside that, we'll start to do that more detailed coordination of other changes outside of branding that need to be made to the existing sites. So contact information and minor updates to content that might be necessary because of other changes. And again, moving into March and April, starting to get to like a rolling migration plan of decommissioning. So this is our first attempt to try and make some of those messages really clear and accessible for a wider audience. I think Juliet's going to start to send some of this out next week. So if there's any feedback, it probably isn't perfect yet. And this is kind of a core set of messages that we can build on at different times with different levels of detail, depending on what our needs are. But hopefully that helps. If you've got any feedback, then please let us know. And this is a slide. So there's a more of the roadmap that we're starting to draw the lines between those high level things and then down to some of the kind of page templates and like more granular components, etc., that we need to prioritize. There's still a little bit of work to do on this, but I think this allows us to add more detail on the link between these service areas and the things we're actually building. But again, it's quite a lot of detail in here. It allows us as a team to track progress, but it's probably a bit overwhelming whilst there's so many other messages being communicated to send this kind of level of detail out to people at the moment. And that's it from me. Over to Ale.
And on content, so what are we doing? There are two main things that we have to cover as content workstream. One is the operating model that I will talk about, and the other one is actually content writing for the pages that we have prioritized for at least starting with January 15. So about the operating model, we sent out a survey to content editors, and we got 45 answers back. And the questions within the survey covered things from: did you get any training for your responsibility as a content writer? What works well in the current process? What could be improved? What do you think about the current content management system, if you have one? How many content edits do you do, or how often did it happen throughout the last year that you had to upload new content? Down to what is your one recommendation for the future model? So next slide, please. So we review the insights from these surveys, and so thank you everyone who shared the surveys around, and thank you everyone who took the time to actually fill in the survey. And the key insights so far are the staff really appreciate the autonomy and the support from the web team. They often express a desire to add items that are not always considered from a content design accessibility perspective best practice, so PDFs, tables, slideshows. But there is a very strong desire for more training and for guidelines, so it's something we're going to look into. In general, there's overall frustration with poor search, navigation, and layout, and they are looking for a better integration with backend services. And overall, we think there is some understanding about putting the user needs first, but I think there's some improvement that can be possible in that direction. So what are we doing next? We are drafting now eventually the new operating model, taking consideration both the insights from the surveys and the insights from the workshop that we did a couple of weeks ago, so last sprint, with actually content owners. And then what we're going to do, we have already a set of user stories that are already referring to the content management model. We're going to review it, so in order to inform the development. Over to Stephen.
Hi there. So David and I have been tasked with actually getting the content there ready for the 8th of January and the 15th and the beta site. When I say we've been tasked to do this, it's actually been David that's done a lot of the legwork there, so thank you, David. And then going on to get more content ready for the 1st of April on the minimum viable product as well. That includes things like what we've seen in the table before about information governance and contacting us. We're collating all of the content and getting a new Trello page set up for this, that any interested parties can take a look at to see how we're progressing. Plan B in terms of the 8th and the 15th of January for the beta site is we get some alternative content, because obviously it's a very tight timeline with Christmas coming up. We might need some temporary content put on that we've taken from existing sites and then just rebranded to the new council name. And as it stands, we've started getting information coming through. It's clear it's going to be a bit of a culture change with people already requesting downloads, which we want to avoid because it's not best practice. Numerous links and everything else. So we're having to tell people, or we will be telling people, that their content is going to have to be simplified quite a lot because we want that user journey to be simple, as well as the design of the actual website. And Mickey Mouse is there because it goes back to my Disney question all the time. So the Disney question came through on a tourism DVD brochure that Disney World sent to me once, and they said that the most asked question in Disney World is, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? So I now tell that to absolutely everyone who provides content to me and say, that is the member of the public, you've got to ask that question. And if it meets that question and that kind of simplification, then we've got it right. But yeah, we've just started and hopefully quite successful. Thanks.
So team, we've been talking at you for almost 50 minutes, so I'm going to just quickly hold this slide up and just talk to the right hand side of it. So what's next? So our next sprint goes to the 23rd of December. I think we've got a bit of a Q&A session as well. I can hear some pings in the background of everyone's questions and comments, and our goal for this sprint is to design, test, build and write content for the key pages and flows which are going to be in the beta site, which has been referenced throughout the show and tell. And also, it would be great if we could start to define URLs for a few key services, because I know there's a few questions coming in there. And now, just a quick reminder, this is from Juliet. Everyone that's going to be presenting next week is going to be in festive spirit, festive jumpers. So if you've got a Christmas jumper, please BYO, and we'll see you on the 23rd. But before we go, I wanted to spend a quick 3 minutes asking you for an activity. So Ale, over to you.
Yes. So next slide, please. As Chris mentioned, we've been playing around with iconography, and we've been testing already some, mainly with one user really. And as Chris already said, there are pros and cons in using them, but now we want to get your views on it. So we're going to do a very quick exercise. And we're going to ask you to wear your resident shoes, as well as the goal of this exercise is really to make you understand what happens when we do user testing, what it feels like and what you can get out of it. This is the link. I'm going to copy and paste the link here so you've got everything. But please bear in mind that this is not exactly how we do user testing. So it's just an exercise to see what are your preferences. So we've been already pre-filling some answers. That's not how it really works in qualitative research, but it's really for the sake of the exercise. So let's jump there. Con, maybe can you share the screen so that I can guide through?
No problem. So if you're not understanding, if you weren't here in the last sprint show and tell, if you go to this website, if someone could post it in the chat if they haven't done it already, and this is the code, then you'll be greeted with, here we go, let me just present. Oh wow, people are up there and have done it.
Go.
So we got 7 people that have just commented. Sorry, Ale, go ahead.
No, that's it. These are like 3 possible answers that we would possibly get from people when we do testing. So we wanted to see what is your feeling about them, just to show you really what it is like to do user testing more than anything else. What is the number of people we want to get to, Con?
I'd love to get to 20. So we're on 17. So we're almost there.
We can do that. Yeah.
So it seems like we're at 19. So I'm going to start. They've got 20 already. So it looks like most people, so 3.6 is the current average for people, think that icons make it easier to navigate through content. In terms of icons are confusing and make websites overcomplicated, it looks like the average is lower. So they potentially, that could indicate that it simplifies the website and makes it less complicated. And the final one, icons make a website more visually appealing. So that's from what Lawrence and Chris and Hannah were showing us, a bit of the kind of like user experience or UX design. On this questions about the kind of like UI design. So lots of buzzwords at you, but I really hope that this show and tell. You learned a little bit more about design because that's what you asked for, and I hope you're all very excited for the final few weeks of the year, and we'll see you hopefully on the 23rd if you're still here. If not, have a very Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao.